listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, the Enhanced Games were officially launched this week, but the elite competition is again under fire for allowing juiced-up athletes, including Australian champion James Magnussen, to break records and compete for massive prize money. So, is it fair or a dangerous, slippery slope that will ruin sports competitions? We unpack all the controversy with sports journalist Tracy Holmes. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Friday, the 23rd of May. The Prime Minister is promising help is on the way as the flood disaster continues to devastate tens of thousands of residents across northern New South Wales. Anthony Albanese and the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns held a special news conference earlier today announcing a number of emergency financial measures. Floodwaters in some areas are starting to recede, but authorities are warning the danger is far from over. 4 people have died and there are grave concerns for another person still missing at the time of this recording. Anthony Albanese says army choppers are also assisting with ongoing rescues and the massive cleanup ahead.
We will make other Defence Force personnel available for assistance should it be requested, and they remain always ready to help their fellow Australians.
It looks like the federal coalition is getting back together, with reports the Liberal Party room has given Susan Lee the green light to reunite with the Nationals. It's believed the Liberals have agreed in principle to some demands from the Nationals over a number of policies, including nuclear energy and also regional funding. There's also speculation another leadership challenge is on the way, targeting Nationals leader David Littleproud. And Donald Trump's administration has banned Harvard University from enrolling international students, including Australians. Australia's ambassador to the US, Kevin Rudd, says they are working with the US government to try and revoke the controversial new move. The Department of Homeland Security alleges Harvard had created, quote, an unsafe environment by coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party and also allegedly allowing anti-American pro-terrorist agitators to assault students on campus. Now it's time to get into our deep dive on the Enhanced Games with sports journalist Tracy Holmes. Australian swimming champion James Magnussen is among the many to sign up. He has confirmed he is taking a number of performance-enhancing drugs, including peptides and testosterone, in the lead-up to next year's big event in Vegas. He says he's never felt better. But many top sports experts say these athletes are trashing their reputation and the entire sport, as well as sending a dangerous message to younger athletes. Tracy Holmes says the Enhanced Games are a window to the future and aren't necessarily about the athletes. It's about the billion-dollar biotech industry and its brilliant marketing and sales campaign.
We are here to move humanity forward, to redefine what mankind can be with audacity. The next era of human potential is here.
Tracy, thanks so much for joining us. So much talk and publicity around these so-called Enhanced Games. Can you explain exactly what they are?
Well, we only found out a lot of the detail today. They had their official launch in Las Vegas. Essentially, the games themselves will be held in 1 year from today. There'll only be 3 sports contested. One will be sprint swimming, one will be sprint on the track, athletics, and the other will be weightlifting. Now, essentially, the whole idea around the games being enhanced means that athletes are enhanced by being able to take certain supplements, things that are currently banned in elite sport. So when you hear about the Olympic Games and all the sports that are contested there, you hear about anti-doping movements like the World Anti-Doping Agency that do all of these tests to make sure athletes are not taking these sorts of substances. Well, the Enhanced Games is a place where you can take those substances, which is why we've heard from James Magnussen, who was one of the early adopters, to say, yeah, look, I'm willing to give that a go because I'm not competing in the Olympics anymore. And I'd be pretty keen to know that if I did take these and it was under supervision of an experienced medical team, whether I could break a world record. And the organisers have said that any world record broken, that athlete will be given $1 million. So it's enticing for a lot of people.
It's quite incredible when you look at the concept of this. They can take supplements, they can take performance-enhancing drugs. Do we know exactly what they can and can't take? And are there any rules and regulations surrounding the enhanced games, or is it just juice up on whatever you want?
Well, they've been talking about this for about 2 years. So the founder, there are two actually, but one is an Australian man, Aaron D'Souza, and there's also an investor whose name is Christian Angermeyer. Now, Christian is very involved in spending a lot of money in researching the sort of biotech industry and all sorts of developments that are happening there. So what we've seen is, something that was very much like almost underground, or you'd hear about people doing things in the gym which were probably not quite legal. This is all about legal substances and stuff that has been really well researched now, that you can go into. Most shopping malls have stores where you can go in and buy a lot of this stuff, but there's other stuff as well, that you get put in through drips or injections that is not so common and quite expensive. But as more science happens with this, there seems to be a growing market. So at the moment, that biotech industry is worth about $220 billion. And they imagine that by 2032, and interestingly, I'm in Brisbane, I've just been at a press conference about the Brisbane Olympics. So in 2032, when those Olympics are happening, the biotech industry is going to be worth almost double, they imagine, so more than $400 billion. So it's an interesting conversation, because I was fascinated when James said he went off and he was surrounded by this medical team that they put him in touch with, medical experts, physical trainers, health experts, dietitians that monitored everything that went into his body and how his body responded to that. And he said for the first little while, he was feeling really guilty because he'd grown up in elite sport and was so concerned about not putting anything banned into your body and, falling to the very strict anti-doping code. And so he felt guilty having these injections and seeing what was happening. But now I think he's fully convinced. He's been amazed at the change he saw in his own body and the difference in strength and recovery. And that's what a lot of doping cheats have always said. It's the recovery aspect, not actually, it doesn't make you a better person in what you do, running or swimming. You've got to be good at that anyway. What it gives you is this recovery benefit.
Tracy, great point you make there, because James, in press conferences surrounding the launch of these games, has actually said he's never felt better or healthier in his professional life.
Yeah, this is the interesting part. And I think this is where, a lot of athletes say that they really buy into clean sport and doping-free sport because people don't know the long-term ramifications. We've heard stories about people that have doped up to the eyeballs before, and you get terrible problems later on, cancers in your liver and all sorts of horrendous illnesses. But I think as this area of health and research and medicine develops and more of the general public are participating in these sorts of, supplements, taking them and adapting their lifestyle, I wonder how much sport is going to have to recognise that to remain relevant. And I don't think that's something that's going to happen overnight. And I think the enhanced games themselves are probably something that are going to be very interesting in America because they've been at the forefront of this for so long. And so they will probably engage with it in a whole different way to many other places around the world. And traditional sport is going to take some time to adapt to that. But as mums, dads, kids, just people trying to be healthy and live longer and be healthier and, do what they can for this longevity. Not that I can imagine wanting to live, into 120, but that's what these people are talking about. But that's the sort of the challenge, and this is the dynamic we're talking about now.
Tracy, in regards to a lot of athletes have come out slamming these enhanced games, saying they played by the rules for so many years. This isn't fair. It's not a level playing field anymore. It's just, the best scientists or researchers or health professionals you've got around you with the best drugs or enhanced performance drugs, that it's not a level playing field and this is really unfair. Nothing to do with talent. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say to that they're not being asked to compete against them. So, any athlete that still wants to be an Olympic swimmer or basketballer or hockey player or track and field athlete, you're quite free to do that. And many people will be supporting athletes to keep going down that path and for anti-doping to remain such a high priority, because we still have so many questions around the long-term health aspects of taking some of these supplements. So, go for it. No one is saying they have to compete against these, drug-fueled athletes. So they're just going to be competing in the enhanced games. And so it's like two different things. Remember, we had an era where there were some sports and some athletes who were amateur and others who were professional, and there was a real kind of divide. And then it all just kind of broke away and it all came back together again, and we just had sport as it is today. So I think it's one of those moments. It's one of those sort of key topics of the generation, if you like. How fast do you go down this track? How far do you go down it? Or do you just stick to your guns on, being completely anti-doping, doping-free? Or do you start engaging with this? And many people are going to feel some angst towards having that sort of a conversation. And I mean, James Magnussen himself, he was an Olympic swimmer. He went through all of that. He abided by the system. He didn't put anything that was against the rules into his system. He did the doping controls every time they turned up and knocked on his door at 6 a.m. So he knows what that is like. And this is now something that he's doing beyond that career.
The enhanced games are now leading every news bulletin on every front page of the paper. There's lots of conversations about it. Could one argue, well, I may argue, that this is a brilliant marketing ploy by the biotech billion-dollar industry to get us talking about exactly that?
100%. And I remember the first time I heard them talking about these enhanced games, and it was going to be a new way of doing sport and a new way of broadcasting sport. And I thought, oh, hang on, who's investing in this? Oh, right, the people that are producing all of these supplements and researching. Yeah, okay, if it's a $220 billion market, I think I know what they're doing. And at today's launch, they actually said that. They said, we've had a world record already in training. We've got a documentary that we've been making that you can watch on YouTube. And if you go on the website, you can buy your own supplements now so you too can be superhuman.
It's extraordinary. And in regards to the way of the future, Tracy, because I think straight away, I may not agree with this, I may not agree with what they're doing to their bodies, but am I going to tune in and watch these super juiced up athletes break world records? Possibly.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting to see. So I thought it was quite fascinating that it's still a year away. So they're obviously still doing work and they're going through whatever teething problems they have. But they've got a venue now, and no surprises, it's in America, because a lot of athletes in America do take what we would consider performance-enhancing drugs and seem to get away with it. And it's in Las Vegas, where all the ritzy shows happen. So, yeah, it's found its home for sure, but we'll know more in a year, just how many athletes are prepared to do this, what sort of times or speeds or strength we're looking at, and whether there are any sort of longer-term implications as far as health and the human body goes. But it's certainly not something that is just going to be fly-by-night. It is something where a lot of money is being invested and, a lot of work is taking place. It's a huge industry now.
Watch this space. Tracy, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Oh, lovely to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
That was sports journalist Tracy Holmes. And we'll be back tomorrow with the weekend briefing. And on tomorrow's ep, Antoinette Lattouf is joined by the founder of I Quit Sugar, Sarah Wilson.
People go, oh, hang on, this is a surprise. How did you go from sugar to anxiety to the climate crisis and now to civilizational collapse?
We'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company. Enjoy your weekend.